Hi and welcome back to the channel. It's watch list time again. 5 recent watches that have made my way through. 5 varied and different labels as I way through. Big spread this month. So let's get right down with what is essentially my most recent watch, and one that I and about picking up and getting delivered to me, and ultimately was very surprised by what I found when I watched it. We're talking about Western Approaches from BFI. Now, Western Approaches from BFI, I sort of understood to be one of those documentary tellings of events that happened during the war. The Great White Silence, the story of the Antarctica missions, kind of this archive footage that's put together and represented, and you kind of go, I can't believe I'm watching like film activity from that time. This one is from the middle of the war essentially, and is a docudrama, so it is a dramatization of events that it fits very squarely in the British propaganda sense of, trying to promote kind of what was good about the war, getting people to sign up, getting people to believe and support at home. And a couple of things stand out about it. One, it's in colour. I can't tell you how weird it is to watch a film of that era of the Second World War in colour, a dramatization, and it sort of creates a disconnect in your head because it looks like it was made in the 1960s, 70s easily. The other thing is that the people that are acting within it are actually servicemen. They're non-actors, and Pat Jackson, who wrote and directed this, does such a masterful job. Now, there's no getting away that they aren't actors in it. In some ways, it's a bit tonally flat. It's a bit. It doesn't get the highs of dramatization that you might find. But when you consider that this was filmed and made at a time when the war was still going on, it tells the story of men trapped in a lifeboat who want to be saved out in the middle of the Atlantic, in the Battle of the Atlantic. Those that don't know, Britain was still importing a lot of its goods from overseas to help feed people, etc. So there was trade coming from America to England to support. German submarines were kind of thinking, this is easy pickings. We can kind of shoot down the boats, etc., that are here and kind of hamper the war efforts and the feeding of the British people by doing it. So that whole stretch of water was dangerous, especially as you got near the coasts. And they used actual stationed warships as rather than building new ones or building sets, so they filmed everything in location. In this case, in the middle of the Irish Sea while the war's going on, and a lot of times they had to not film because it was getting too dangerous, it was too much fog, etc. Yet, this dramatization of a lifeboat looking to be saved, submarines, people trying to save them, are they going to get saved? The kind of feelings that people had, it's utterly fascinating. Like, I is it the height of drama? No. Is it the height of great performance? No. Is it a historical wonder and something that's utterly fascinating? Yes. And the past couple of BFI releases, they just do this better than anybody else. You even have like a bit of a documentary where Pat Jackson and Jack Cardiff, who does the camera work, both talk about this. Actual interview with Jack Cardiff. I can't tell you how exciting that is. And then a lot of the short films that are in the booklet, that talk about the booklet, are included on the disc. The whole thing's just amazing. Just amazing and a real treasure. And some people don't seem to like the cover work that's on the art style. Same the Jean Renoir films. I very much do like this art style, and something that I very much enjoy. So that's my first recommendation of this month. Next up is, well, one disc in, and we haven't talked about a MUBI Blu-ray release, and I'm really in my MUBI mood at the moment. And this one I actually watched a while ago, was going to do a separate review, recorded the review, it was about 4 minutes. I thought I'd stick it to watch that stage. This is Holy Spider, Abi Abbasi's follow-up, I believe follow-up to Border, which is also out in MUBI, is about as totally different as you can possibly be from one film to the other one. This one tells the story of a serial killer called the Spider serial killer within a town, city in Iran. Now, the serial killer was killing prostitutes and people that he considered to be be against his faith. In his eyes, he thought he was cleansing the world, and I think it shows the power of religion as a justification for horrible acts, and how troublesome it is, especially when we see the people that he's killing. Apostasy very clearly shows how they aren't just nameless figures, aren't bad people. They're people that are caught in poverty. They're people that are trying to support their families, trying to do right by them. But ultimately, it showcases that against a journalist, female journalist, who comes in to investigate the crimes, and with the help of some other people, is determined to get to the bottom of the spider serial killer, and putting themselves in danger while also fighting the prejudice that they have in around females within that society. It's not very preachy, but it tells the story for what it is and leaves it for you to judge. I think Holy Spider is terrific in that regard. It shows the whole thing from start to finish. The serial killer's known, so it's not like a surprise. It's not a who is it kind of thing. We follow that character as closely as we do everybody else in the film, and kind of see through their eyes of why they feel they're justified, and also what way that plays out in the public eye. Really impactful film, really beautifully shot, and really beautifully set up as an idea of, at night, how things can happen at night, and lots of people don't know what's going to happen within it, and the impact of those acts on the people that are close to you, the people that are further away from you, and how people will use you in that regard. Holy Spider is another terrific MUBI Blu-ray release. Talking about terrific releases, let's go for a 4K, and a film by Juni and Caro. It's the French film City of Lost Children, which came out recently on Studio Canal 4K. Well, I hadn't seen City of Lost Children beforehand. It had somehow passed me by. It's, a 1990s film that tells the story of, kids being abducted for the purposes of helping a man who can't dream. I mean, that's very much it. It's a very Guillermo del Toro kind of idea, and esque, sort of reminiscent of Pan's Labyrinth, that kind of thing, but without the weird and wonderful. But so a lot of the imagery is sort of that line of creepy to unsettling, and the lighting, etc., that's within City of Lost. It's a very grey and beige and dirty world that they live in, that is really highlighted very strongly in the 4K release that we have here. Ron Perlman plays a strongman character, somebody who's like a circus performer, but whose brother gets abducted, and he becomes the strong silent type, and working with a group of child actors in trying to get to the bottom of this. We've got clones, we have crazy, weird, wonderful characters with fisheye lens in terms of filming. It's a real fantasy spectacle of a film, and one that I think is sort of amazing, especially when you think of its influence on other films that followed it, and other filmmakers that follow it. And the 4K print itself, I think, on one hand, exposes some of the kind of, in some cases, the cuts between, what they had filmed and what they drew, and that kind of thing, but also in general how, real sets, real people, real things kind of trump CGI in a lot of ways. It's a stunning looking movie. I think it's a fascinating kind of look at how you take a lot of child performers, especially when you contrast it with something like Western approaches, that they would, child performers and actors, but you kind of get great performances out of it in this very believable, strong way, and tell a really dramatic and thoughtful and sort of horrific in some ways story. And it's like on the darker side of fantasy. City of Lost Children, I think, is great. Next up, Vinegar Syndrome time. VSI release Dog Tags. Now, what you think you're going to get with Dog Tags and what you get from Dog Tags are two very different things. You have Italian B-movie director directing a film about Vietnam, and you think you're going to get like a Nam-sploitation kind of all action, blood, guts telling of that type of story. And in pretty broad terms, I suppose you sort of do. It is gory in places. This is much more of a thinking man's film. not quite to the level of Apocalypse Now, but in that kind of idea that it's very thoughtful. We have a lot of soldiers that are looking to rescue people that are in captivity at the start of the film. They've released them, and this gang of American soldiers looking to get home are diverted and asked as a high priority target to pick something up along the way and return with it. But of course, this thing they've been asked to pick up is, well, riches essentially, and they're caught in the trap of this greed, or making, using American soldiers, but them getting nothing out of it, kind of feeding the war machine that way, and how they're conflicted, and how that kind of tears at the group, and how that feeds into their insecurities about how they should be treating each other. It's thoughtful. The acting's not of a level that Apocalypse Now has, for instance, which I think is the big determiner. But a lot of the themes and ideas that are in here are kind of fascinating. And we get as an extra, typical Vinegar Syndrome, we get an interview with the director where he goes into his motivations for why he wanted to make something like this. And I think that is ultimately as fascinating, because he was like speaking and working as a journalist within, and wanted to tell certain stories of how, the war was happening in Vietnam. You had kind of guerrilla tactics that were going along, why it was difficult for American soldiers, but also the stories of the things that weren't being told, and how he desperately wanted to tell that story, even given that he was a sort of B-movie Italian director at the same time. Utterly fascinating release, and one that I think it would be easy to overlook as being sort of exploitation, guts, glory, kind of glorifying war. It doesn't do that. It sort of looks at the personal and the individuals that were affected, and the kind of choices they had to make, and what was being asked of them. And we even get like 2 endings, so you can make your own view of which one you like better. But yeah, dog tags, not what I was expecting, but sort of fascinating. And then last film we're going to talk about is a Criterion release, and look, I'm sorry, this was recommended by my good friend Elliot Cohen. I mean, Elliot usually knows what he's talking about, and when he described it, sometimes you just hear it in a description and go, that sounds like something that I'm really going to like. The film I'm going to talk about is Exotica by Adam McGowan, and I haven't really watched any Adam McGowan at all, and I really didn't know what to expect. But what I get shown at the start of this film was a seedy world of a strip club that has Elias Koteas as like a kind of a compere. He kind of narrates the dancing of the individuals that you've got here, and what you think is happening is we have kind of people coming into the club and they're passing off girls dressed in school uniforms as being erotic and kind of being objects of desire, and it all feels a bit grimy and uncomfortable, and that continues through an awful lot of the story. But opposed to that, we have one of the characters that we follow that comes to the club that seems to have a relationship with his friend's daughter, and then he drops her home every night, and you're wondering what that relationship is, and he has some sort of traumas background, and you're not really, they've all this stuff in the melting pot, and I'm not going to destroy anything for you, but by the end of this movie, and by the time the film finished, I was like, I need to watch this again, because upon rewatching, everything has new meaning. Everything has 2 meanings within this film. It is incredible. Utterly incredible. I cannot get over how good this film is in terms of a watch. There's great conversation between Goyen and one of the main actresses in here, who Sarah Polley, who's become a very successful director herself. Just this film feels quite special in that kind of using our own prejudice and judgment of how we look at people and judge people against ourselves, into how we judge people and how we think about people. But obviously there's a lot more going on underneath the surface. Oh, Exotica. Mwah. Chef's kiss. More people should watch Exotica. Terrific stuff. And that is my watch list for the past couple of weeks. I hope you found something to get out of those recent watches that I've made there, and have some good recommendations with there. Another mixed and merry bunch there. What have you been watching? What have you been up to? Have you seen any of these? Let me know in the comments. If you want to watch more videos like this, I'll leave the playlist at the end of the video so that you can make your way through all 50 odd episodes of the watch list if you like this kind of content, and I'll catch you again soon on the channel. Take care. All the best. Bye.